We're here again at the edge of your seat. This is the penultimate episode of 2017 in 100 films. Let's watch. Dunkirk is the compulsive and propulsive war story of the British Army's retreat from France in World War II. To account for the different time frames this took place over, it's told from three intersecting perspectives: the land, the sea, and the air. Harry Styles is tolerable, but he's bolstered by reliably great turns from Mark Rylance and Tom Hardy. The dialogue is sparse, and there's no clear protagonist. This is a visual tale of soldiers, airmen, and civilians fighting the odds for survival. As expected from Christopher Nolan and Hans Zimmer, the cinematography and soundtrack are stunning and they work beautifully together. Based on the books that always felt like an American version of the Beano, Captain Underpants, the first epic movie, follows two preteen troublemakers who hypnotise their principal into believing he's the eponymous hero just so that they can have more free time fun. The animation is inventive throughout, playing with lots of different styles. It's self-consciously silly and childish, but the chances are it'll still entertain any adult who doesn't take themselves too seriously. I was giggling throughout. But at its heart, it's mainly about the enduring power of childhood friendship, and that's kind of beautiful, really. The Emoji Movie tries to delve into the inner workings of the average teenager's smartphone by anthropomorphizing emojis. It's so stupid, I'm going to review it on its own level. I only once, but that was more of a most of the I was at the bad or at how Sony was. It was all about the and none of the. It's like they didn't about how actually work, but just wanted to this. It's complete. Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets is a beautiful mess. As a visual treat, it's stunning. A cocktail of Star Trek, Guardians of the Galaxy, and John Carter, all whipped up with The Fifth Element. The pre-title sequence in particular is wonderful, wordless storytelling set to David Bowie. But when the words start, oh dear. The plotting is confused, the protagonist's dialogue is often downright painful, the acting itself can be a bit ropey too. That being said, there are enough amazing ideas in the visuals and some of the many side plots to recommend it. It's like a particularly idiotic puppy overall. It's lovely to look at, eager to please, but it's all over the place and some people will just see it as too much of a handful. Logan Lucky stars Channing Tatum and Adam Driver as the supposedly cursed Logan brothers. We follow their attempt to rob a NASCAR vault during the biggest race of the year, so essentially a country-fried heist film. Think Ocean's 11 meets Smokey and the Bandit. It's oozing with charm, character and humour. All of the cast are excellent, but Daniel Craig especially is an absolute prison riot as the bomb expert. A barnstorming return for director Soderbergh. There have been several films this year that I've described as hard to watch, but Detroit is a gut punch. Set around the events of the Algiers Motel in 1967, it's a film with toxic race relations at its heart. The performances are all solid, the music is perfect, and the direction feels very grounded in the action of the moment. The pacing can feel like being relentlessly bludgeoned, which is oddly fitting for a film about police brutality. Of course, the scariest impact is knowing that the depicted events can and do still happen today, but that just makes it vital viewing. American Made is the story of the pilot at the heart of the infamous Iran-Contra affair. Look it up. Dealing drugs for Pablo Escobar and guns for the CIA. That it manages to boil down such a complicated conspiracy into a breezy romp is down to a great script and a loose handheld direction. It's got the feel of Wolf of Wall Street if it was an 80s home video. The whole thing's powered by Tom Cruise, who seems to be making up for The Mummy with a powerhouse performance of pure charisma. It's not essential viewing by any means, but it's good fun. Annabelle Creation is a horror origin that is a vast step up in quality from the first film. Telling the story of the first possession of the doll from The Conjuring, it's got some nice tension building set pieces and solid character work, especially for child actors. It's not as good as its parent series and it's still a lesser horror, but you could do a lot worse if you're looking for a scare. The Limehouse Golem charts the unravelling mystery surrounding a string of gruesome murders in 1880s London, told through a theatrical mock-up of the suspects. That theatricality plays into why I loved it so much. It owes everything to Music Hall, Grand Guignol, the Jack the Ripper tours. There's also a surprising but much appreciated feminist and queer streak to it. It's likely you'll be ahead of the actual mystery itself by the end, but if you love a bit of macabre melodrama, it'll be right up your street. Set in Berlin during the last days of the Berlin Wall, Atomic Blonde is a standard but stylish, twisty-turny Cold War spy affair. Information is needed by both sides, someone's a double agent, it's pulpy le carré. That familiarity and some odd pacing make it less effective than it should be, but when it goes all out on the synth-back, neon-lit John Wickian action, it kicks serious arse, especially a long-take stairwell brawl that makes Daredevil look sedate. It isn't quite as terrifying as the hype promised, but that said, I didn't really care. There are a lot of clown jump scares, but there's also a great build-up of tension around him and the town. Derry itself is delightfully messed up and creepy, even without the supernatural element, but it's the kids who make it. The relationships feel lived in, throwing rocks at enemies but throwing sarcastic insults at friends. The majority of the film is a pitch-black Stand By Me, a sweary Stranger Things, a coming-of-age story for fucked up kids in a diseased town. That's the real horror, and that's what makes it worth it. The Ritual is about 4 British men lost in the woods in Sweden while celebrating the life of their tragically killed friend. It's a low-budget horror, and whilst it's not surprisingly original for genre fans, it is effective fun. The writing between the friends is excellent, think blokey Blair Witch, and there's deeper themes of guilt and the power of tradition. The effects design is impressive for what it is too, making good use out of little. It's no classic, but it's better than a lot of pumped-out horror pablum. Kingsman: The Golden Circle is a cheeky, ultra-violent cartoon homage and spoof of classic spy films with an inbuilt criticism of the excesses of American culture, whilst itself being excessive. So, just like the first one. That in itself isn't a criticism. If you loved Secret Service, you'll probably like this one too. But it's still overall not as good, because it's mostly just a stakes-upped repeat. It's overlong and flabby, but the action and comedy is still great, with Taron Egerton and Colin Firth still commanding the screen, though both are upstaged by Elton John. Mother is a lightly charming, feel-good rom-com about an adorable couple's mishaps renovating an old house while dealing with wacky neighbours. No, I'm kidding. But considering how mismarketed it's been, it might as well not be. It's art house abstract madness being sold as mainstream horror. But the real horror comes from taking a cyclical biblical genesis and showing it from the Earth's perspective. So, a woman's view of man's destructive creation. It's unsettlingly fucked up, but only because we're not used to this view. Look, I understand the hate that it's had, it's a bit of a Marmite film, but personally, I think it's great. Flatliners. It's just flat. The core concept of touching the beyond and atoning for sins is a great one, but the execution is just completely dull. The acting is only passable, the score is uninteresting, the writing is full of exposition without really explaining anything. Look, I like not knowing whether the hauntings were real or metaphorical, but in the end the characters were so unlikable that I didn't care whether anything good happened to them or not. Oh, I'm just going back to sleep rather than watching this one. Goodbye Christopher Robin is an interesting and quietly affecting film. It's not so much about the creation of the Winnie the Pooh books themselves as their effect on those closest to them. In fact, it's all about outside pressures, war, fame, and that upper-class British stiff-upper-lip attitude, and their negative effect on family life. Far from the fictional idyllic childhood, it shows a child raised mainly by a nanny, with a mostly disinterested mother and a shell-shocked father often keeping their distance. It could have been schmaltzy and twee, but it's really rather good. Bladerunner 2049 is a masterclass. The visuals, the story, the soundscape all take the original as a solid starting point and expand into a new realm of brilliance. As with the predecessor, anyone expecting an action blowout will be disappointed. The pacing is purposefully slow and methodical so that the world and its ideas can have maximum impact. This is dystopian sci-fi as art. The Lego Ninjago movie is the legend of Lloyd, a teenage green ninja who protects the town from the evil Garmadon, a warlord who just happens to be his dad. In fairness, it's probably the least of the Lego franchise thus far. The pop culture hook isn't as strong as with Batman, and it's yet again about unresolved father-son issues, but it's at least still visually impressive. Basically a parody of Power Rangers and Karate Kid. And also, it's got Jackie Chan in it, and he's always watchable. The Snowman is a Scandi noir thriller about a serial killer whose calling card is, well, Snowman. Frankly, it's a bit of a disappointing mess. There's a lot of jumping around, both in terms of the story and the editing. It's as though the film is so anxious to keep up the tension that it's fidgeting. And despite logical leaps, the ending is painfully obvious. That being said, Michael Fassbender is good as the lead and the location scenery is gorgeous. I really wanted to like this one, but it just left me cold. Sorry, just stick to the Raymond Briggs one. The Death of Stalin shows the chaotic aftermath of the death of Stalin. It's a dark political satire and farce that highlights the hilarity and the horror of totalitarianism. Think of it as a communist version of The Thick of It and you won't be far off. The cast is uniformly great, but it's Jason Isaacs who somehow steals every scene he's in as General Zhukov, who he plays with a Yorkshire accent for some reason. It might not be everyone's shot of vodka, but I loved it.